Hello and welcome back to the kitchen of renowned professional amateur chef Tomate Delicioso. I'm so glad you're here with me. Happy Friday, everyone. By popular demand, there's been a slight change to this week's practical skills cooking demonstration. I have brought my assistant along to help with the cooking. So, without further ado, let me introduce him to you. This is my assistant. His name is Dusty, and he's a good boy. Oh, thanks, bud. So for today, there's a new recipe or a new dish that I'd like to make for all of you, and it goes by many different names. Some people may know it by eggs in a basket, eggs with toast. I know it by pirate eyes. My mom used to call them pirate eyes because I think that they resemble like a pirate eye patch. I'll let you guys be the judge of that. But anyway, we're making pirate eyes, yay! Which means we're gonna be cooking on the range again. So before we get into the cooking, once again, we're gonna show the obligatory warning. Just make sure you guys are cooking with your parents. Make sure that you have their permission and they're supervising you. Cooking can be kind of dangerous, so it's really important that you guys get your parents' supervision and their permission before you start any of this. So make sure they know what you're doing, they're watching you, so that you all can stay safe in the kitchen. Just like any other recipe, before we get started, we gotta make sure that our hands are washed. I'm gonna go wash my hands. All right, hands are washed, feeling clean. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my pan and put it on the stove so it can start warming up. I do this very first before I even get any of my ingredients out because it's really important that when you put the toast and the egg on the pan that it's already hot, and it can take a little while for it to warm up. So I like to do this very first. So I'm putting the pan on. And again, handle towards the inside. If you remember in my other videos where we cooked on the stove, you don't want to accidentally bump into the handle. Like, let's say I left it like that, I could accidentally bump into it, right? And this is gonna be very hot. So, make sure the handle is always in towards the inside of the range so you don't bump into it. Stay safe out there. So now it's time to turn the heat on the stove. And this time it's a little bit different. The other times when we were cooking on the stove, we were boiling water and we want to get that water boiling as fast as possible. So we just turned it all the way up to high. When you're doing other things like toast, for instance, like we're going to be doing today, if I just turned it up to high, then the toast would burn way too fast and the egg wouldn't cook and it just wouldn't work. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually just turn it on to medium. Then that still gets hot and it still makes it cook, but it doesn't cook it too fast to where it burns. This little indicator here says that that's the bottom right, which is where we are. So I'm gonna turn this to medium. While my pan is getting warmed up, now I can start getting the ingredients out that I need. So making pirate eyes is simple in that there are not a lot of ingredients, but it's still kind of a challenging thing to make. Once again, just make sure you're doing this with your parents so they can supervise and make sure that you're staying safe. But here's all that you need for pirate eyes or eggs in a basket, whatever you call them. So we have our eggs, we have our bread, and with these you'll just use one of them. You can choose if you have mayo or you want butter. I'm gonna be using the mayo today just because I think it's a little bit easier to spread the mayo onto the bread. You'll see that step in just a second. So now we've got our ingredients together. Let's start assembling this pirate eye. You guys ready for this week's movie magic? I've assembled my cell phone right here so I can be hands-free and don't have to hold this camera while I show you that. Pretty excited. So the first thing I'm gonna do is, you can do this one of two ways. I'm gonna start by cutting a hole in this bread. Once it goes on the pan, that hole is where the egg will go into. Again, you can do this before or after you apply the mayo or the butter. I'm gonna do it before because I don't wanna get messy. All right, so I'm using a knife. Get your parents' help with this. But again, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just a little hole. Easy as that. Now it's time to spread on, in my case, the mayo. Or again, if you're gonna be using butter in this part, that's okay too. Whatever works best for you. So I've got my mayo here, and I'm just gonna very carefully put it around the outside of the hole. And don't forget that when you're buttering or putting the mayonnaise on your bread, make sure you flip it over and get both sides. Because when it goes in the pan, you put the egg in there, you're gonna flip it over, so you have to have it on both sides. So don't forget. You ready, Dusty? Good boy. So before I put anything in the pan, I'm gonna spray it down first. Still new, still gets everywhere. So now the pan's nice and hot. I'm ready to put my bread in there first. Then after the bread goes in the pan, then I'm going to put the egg inside the hole that we made in the bread. And once again, using that movie magic, got my phone in the microwave so I can get this shot. So before I put the bread into the pan, make sure your eggs are close by and ready to go because you want to get that egg in there just as soon as you can so that the bread doesn't cook too much before you get the egg in there. So let's give it a try. Got my toast, my eggs ready to go. Let's do this. Toast goes in first. And we're gonna crack an egg very carefully, right in the middle. It's looking good so far. Remember, anytime that you're dealing with eggs, you gotta make sure you wash your hands. So I'm gonna go do that. So now that that's in there, we gotta let it cook for a while. I'm just gonna keep an eye on it and wait until I can start to see the bottom of the egg maybe start to get a little bit brown or a little crusty. That tells me that the bottom side has been cooking, and then we will flip it. But for now, it's just kind of a waiting game. Assistant Chef Dusty is enthralled by this recipe. He can't wait for it to be over. He's extremely excited, as you can tell. All right, so it's been a few minutes and I think we're ready to flip this over. So really carefully get underneath it, and you gotta do this in one motion. 1, 2, 3. Just like that. And you see the nice brown on that. It's not burnt because we have the heat on medium. It's just perfect. So now that we've flipped it, this other side will take a little bit longer. This other side will cook the majority of the egg, which you really want to make sure you cook thoroughly. We said last time when we were cooking with eggs with the brownies, eggs can have some germs in them that can make you sick if you don't cook the egg all the way. So just make sure you give this side of the toast a little bit more time so it can cook that egg all the way through for you. So it's been cooking for maybe a minute or two, and one way that you can test whether or not it's done is you can just flip it over and see what it looks like, but also you can check to see if the yolk in the inside of the egg is done just by lightly pressing. Right there in the middle, you can just press that. Some people like it so their yolk is still runny, and as long as the rest of the egg is cooked, then that's probably okay. If you don't like your egg runny, then you can just wait by lightly pressing with your spatula on the yolk until you don't feel any more liquid in there. Then that'll tell you that the egg is completely done and cooked. I want to check and just make sure we're not burning the other side, so I'm going to give this a little flip. Slide underneath there. Yeah. You can see the egg is cooking, the bread is still a little bit white on the sides. It isn't really getting toasted. So I'd say we're not quite there yet. I'm gonna flip this back over and let it cook some more. So I think that this is done. The yolk feels pretty firm. I don't feel any of that liquid, so I think I'm ready to take this off. So I'll just slide right underneath there. And maybe I'll flip it over on the plate. Oh yeah, see, it's toasted. It's a little bit burnt maybe on this corner, but that's okay. But overall, that looks perfect. All right, so make sure we turn this off. Good. Don't touch that. That's gonna be hot for a while. Leave that to sit for a long time. And here we have our finished product. Looks pretty delicious. Let's cut into it, into the middle, into the yolk, and see how we did cooking. It's hard to cut with one hand. Give me a break. Okay, be very careful. It might still be warm. You can see there? Yeah, not too bad. The yolk looks just like it's perfectly cooked. So I am very happy with that. I'm very excited to take a bite of that. Well, Dusty, I think that was a success. Just so you guys know, this recipe was actually suggested by one of you students at Spring Creek. They wanted to know how to make pirate eyes. Please keep those suggestions coming. There's a few other suggestions that I've read from you guys that I'm gonna get to. Just fill out that form, you see it linked above, if there's something else that you're interested in knowing how to cook it, and I'll see if I can get to it. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. I hope this was educational. Just remember everyone, stay safe in the kitchen. Don't cook anything without your parents' supervision and permission. Stay safe and have fun. Thanks for watching everyone. I'll see you in the next video.